Teresa.
Hi, Peg.
How are you?
Good.
Good. I'm going to start by we have to get some a little historical background, so I'm going to start by asking you if you'd please give me your full name, including your maiden name.
Okay, my name is Teresa McCormick.
Okay, and how was that name chosen?
You mean my maiden name?
No, do you have any story behind your name? Were you named for someone or anything?
Actually, it's very, very bizarre, but my real name is Margaret.
Okay.
And I guess they gave me Teresa for short, which has happened to few members of my family. Nobody can understand what the reason was, but anyway, for legal purposes, I put down Margaret, but everybody knows me as Teresa.
And was that kind of your middle name or your confirmation name or anything?
It was Margaret Teresa, and they call me Teresa.
Okay.
So I'm kind of like backwards.
Yeah. Okay, that's all right. What part of Ireland are you from?
From Galway.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the name of the town?
A little place called Kinvara, and there's a song after that, Not Far From Old Kinvara,
Okay.
in the merry month of May. And it goes on and on.
And do you sing it?
Yes.
You do? Can you sing it for me?
Sure.
Okay.
Not far from old Kinvara in the merry month of May. Now I have a blank. Well, maybe I'll come back to that
Sure,
later.
you certainly can.
All right.
What parish was that in?
That was in St. Joseph's. We actually had two churches in our parish. One was basically if you wanted to go to the early Mass, which was 8:30. If you wanted to go to the later Mass, you would go to the 10:30. And
what church was the 10:30 in?
St. Joseph's, and they call it a parish church, the other one.
Okay, yeah, all right. And did the same priest do both churches?
We had, luckily enough, to have two priests.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
We call it one the canon, which is like higher than a priest, and then a younger priest, which would be like a resident of the parish.
Yeah, okay. And what was the town? Did you have a townland?
Well, I come from farm, and half of our land was in County Clare, and the other half was in Galway.
Really?
Yeah, because we're just on the boundary. If you cross over, from where my house is, the next street over, you'd be in Clare. So half of our land was over there, and the rest was in Galway.
Very interesting. So how did you decide where you were born, where you came from then?
Well, I was born at home, so I was born in the house, which is in County Galway.
I see.
But had I happened to be born in the field over yonder, which was common in those days for things like that to happen, I would have been born in County Clare.
Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And what was the date of your birth?
I was born October 15, 1937.
Okay. And did you have siblings?
Yes, I'm one of 10 children, but only 9 was alive because my sister Bridie is a half-twin, and her half-twin died at birth.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're all still living except for one brother who passed away 2 years ago.
Okay. And can you name off your siblings?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
My oldest brother is the boy that passed away 2 years ago, and that was Michael. Then my brother Tom, which is in this country. Then my sister Bridie, and my sister Anne, and then Christine, and Jimmy, and I'm the youngest.
Okay. And that didn't sound like 10 children. Did you say there were 10 children?
9 living.
9. Okay.
Yeah.
And where are these people living now?
Okay.
Any of them in Ireland still?
Yeah, I have a sister and brother still in Ireland, and the rest of us are here.
Here in Connecticut?
Right around the area, yeah.
Wow, that's nice.
Yeah, my sister Bridie is married to my husband's brother, so we're married to brothers.
Okay,
and they live in Fairfield.
Okay.
Christine lost her husband last year. She lives in Fairfield. She did live in Trumbull when he was alive, but she moved back to Fairfield to be near us. Anne lives in Easton, of course, you know Anne. She's married to Peter Ballou.
Yeah.
And Jimmy, of course, is over here in Fairfield, married to Joan.
Yeah, and do you see each other a lot?
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
That's nice. So
We
that you also
pop in and out every day.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate.
Yes. Were your parents and grandparents from the same area in
Yes.
Galway?
My mother and father, it was an arranged marriage. My father was way older. He must be like 25 years older than my mother. But he was like a fairly well-to-do farmer. So they kind of got together, and my mom and him married.
Now, was that arrangement made between the families?
Between the
Or
families.
it wasn't?
Between the families.
Okay.
And, you know, I guess back then it was very desirable if a man had a farm of land. So she, being very practical, thought this might be a good idea too, and eventually probably fell in love with my father and lived a great life, and I would say happily.
Yeah. So did she then come from Galway nearby?
Yeah, she lived in the area, which was just a couple of streets away. It was
Yes.
all in the
And
one community.
Was she a farmer's daughter as
Yes.
well?
Hmm. And she's one of 7 children.
And your father was one of how many?
He was one of 5.
Wow. So you had a lot of family
Yes.
right there.
Yes.
An extended family.
Right.
Yeah. What was your mother's maiden name?
My mother's maiden name was Winifred Davenport.
Davenport. Okay. And did she work outside of the home? Had she had any kind
No.
of career?
She had a fairly busy schedule, needless to say. When she married my dad, there was 2 older uncles living in the house with him, because back in those days, as you know, some of the guys didn't marry. They were just bachelors, and they just stayed there. And there was also a sister of my father who was there that wasn't well. And so when she went into that house, she was actually marrying into where there was like 4 people.
Already. So she married your father, but she got 3
Yes.
husbands.
And
Wow.
believe me, it was a tough road. And then she wound up having 10 children, one after the other, like within 10 or 11 years. We were all just about a year apart.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Gutsy lady. Yeah.
She was a
Yeah.
gutsy lady.
Yeah. Yes. Gutsy is right.
Mm.
And did those people that were living in the house, those
They-
brother and sisters, did they live there until they
They
passed away?
They stayed there, and my mom took care of all of them. They wound up having quite lengthy illnesses in the end, and she took care of all of them, plus taking care of us. And looking back on it now, she was like a nurse and doctor and everything rolled into one, and a terrific mom too.
You must have admired her a lot.
I idolized her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can well see.
Yeah.
What was your father's occupation?
He was a farmer.
Okay. And so you all lived on the farm?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was really what you would kind of call the setting of your house, was a farm.
Right.
On a farm.
And it still is there, and it's a thatched cottage. It's in the original shape, where we were born, and we only had 3 bedrooms altogether.
3 bedrooms and
3 bedrooms.
how many people? 15 people or so living in that house?
Well, little by little, as I was born, they were pretty well deceased, the older men, and you know. But I remember sleeping with my sisters, and there would be like 3 or 4 up on top, and maybe 3 in the bottom. All of us girls, and our legs would meet in the middle.
Yes. But it was warm.
Oh, it was terrific. Yeah, we thought it was luxury, you know.
Yeah.
And the good part about it was kind of sneaky now when I remember it, but if you were out on a date or something, when you came in and your feet would be like ice cold, you would just...
I bet you weren't real popular.
And sometimes you'd never be missed either when you were gone.
Yeah.
So it had its advantages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hard to take a head count. Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
What if you were standing in the doorway of your home as a child,
Yeah.
and looking out the door?
Right.
What would you see in front of you?
Just
Could you describe that?
green fields and lots of stones. But as my brothers grew and were capable of doing so, they reclaimed, they called it all of the land, and they just gathered up all the stones and made them into walls to divide these patches, you know, and plus then they were able to use the land where ordinarily if they didn't do that, they wouldn't be able to use the fields because they were full of stones.
Right. The stone walls in Galway are gorgeous.
Yeah.
You almost look like you could see through them.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
always noticed that.
And you know, they're not professionally built, but they've probably been standing there for 100 years.
I know. How many acres of land did your farm have?
I'm sure we all told between the 3 little different patches that we have, because my 3 nephews now inherited, and there's probably over 100 acres.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. And did you raise animals as well?
Oh yeah, we raised everything when I was growing up. It's different today now because they don't till the soil or do any of that. We didn't buy anything, we raised everything. I mean, all our own vegetables. We had our own milk, butter, bread, meat, potatoes, you name it. Basically, all we had to buy was the staples, you know, like soap and
Yes.
stuff like that.
So you actually were you part of the process of preparing
Oh yeah.
the butter?
Yes, the churning.
Yeah.
And we had both kinds, the one that you go up and down and the one that you turn. And if you got a very humid day like it was last week, you could be turning that thing for an eternity, and sometimes the butter wouldn't, they called it gathering.
Yes.
The humidity interfered with the butter.
Oh.
So we all took turns. And it was interesting, they had a custom over there. If you came into the house while they were making butter, like even the mailman, if he came in with a letter or a package, they never let the guy or woman go without taking a hand in making the butter, because they figured it was bad luck and that the person who was leaving would take the butter with them.
Oh.
And so therefore, whoever it was, even a priest, would just take a turn and then move on.
Then move on.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Which one was the easier one to use? The hand one up and down, or the turnaround one?
The up and down one was easier for me because I was always tall.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of just stood up straight and da 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 up and down, you know. But the other one, you had to be very strong because, you know, you went around and round and round.
How long would it take to churn butter?
Oh, well, in a nice cool day, and if you had, you know, the cream very rich, like from the land or whatever where you lived, little by little you'd start to see the milk break up. And there was a little glass door in the churn, so you could see the little, first it would be almost like a cottage cheese, mm-hmm. and then the next thing you'd see actual big pieces of butter. And about 45 minutes, I would say, on a good day.
That's not too bad.
Yeah. And then they took the butter out and it had to be washed in several. My mom had a big wooden tub, and she'd gather it up with, it was like a spatula type of thing, you know, that would scoop it all out and put it into that tub and then wash it, take fresh water, and keep doing that until the water ran clear. Because if you leave any of the milk in it, it would decay the butter.
All right.
Yeah. It was a very interesting process. And then the highlight of the day was you would get a mug or a cup of the buttermilk, freshly made after that, and it was like heaven.
Yeah. Does it taste anything like the buttermilk?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. The buttermilk here sits on the shelves for days. This is like the freshly made buttermilk.
Yeah.
Of course, nothing like it.
Yeah.
And that would be our supper sometimes. We would have that and just potatoes.
Yeah.
That would be our supper.
Rich meal, though.
It was very nutritious, I'm sure.
Yeah. And so you raised your own cows?
Raised our own cows, cattle, and of course sold them off at the fairs, the one that we didn't keep. That we usually had like 4 cows for milking purposes, and then they would be bred each year and have calves, and then the male ones would be fed and fattened and sold off at the fairs, because that was how the income came in.
Right. I was going to ask what was sold to have income coming into
Oh,
the
yeah.
house.
And then we had the sheep and the lambs, and, you know, depending on what was going to be very popular that year, they sold off the young lambs, and some of them they would keep, like the female ones, they would keep some of them for the following year so that the older ones could be, you know, put out to pasture or whatever. And it was just the greatest time when the lambs came. We would, you know, we would go out and be watching for them. We would take a flashlight, and sometimes you would go out and you'd find the sheep was going to have the lamb, and then maybe she might have 2, and she might not take to one, so you'd have to bring the other one in and like give it a bottle with a nipple on it. Mm-hmm. And you might wind up having to stay up all night just catering to this little lamb.
But it was a pet.
Yeah, and then they might say, well, if you take care of this one, you can have it as your own. You know, so it was like a real incentive to just do a good job taking care of it.
Didn't get to go to market then. You got to keep
You got to keep that one, and maybe they would keep it on, or maybe whatever, you know. Yeah. And then when then we'd have the shearing day when they sheared all the sheep. And I remember Tom, even back then, they did it all by hand back then. Now they have machines that do this. They have that clipping things, you know, that, and they start at the head first, and then down the neck, and down along. And when it was finished, if the man that was doing it was a real expert, he would lay it out on the ground, and it would be just like it came off of the sheep. Nothing was broken. The whole thing was one big thing. And then the sheep would take off like that. She was so delighted to get rid of all this wool.
Yeah.
And then they had a way of rolling it up, and I remember I used to put it into the barn, and it would be, fluffy. It was like snow in there. I, as a little girl, remember climbing up on top of it. I mean, we had a lot of the sheep, so there was be like a whole big barn full of this wool, and it was packed down, and the longer it stayed in there, it got heavier, so that when it went to market, it would be worth a lot more than the day it came off the sheep.
Because the oil and the
Yes,
humidity and
yes,
things like that would
yes.
absorb
And
it?
so when the day came when the lorry or whatever would come to take it to market, it was unbelievable the difference. They picked up the wool that came off the sheep. It was like almost 3 times the weight that it was originally.
Yeah. Did you keep any of the wool at home for
No,
to work?
no, because it was very valuable to sell it.
Okay. So your mother wasn't a knitter? She didn't?
No. No, she did knit socks and things like that for the boys and scarves, but on a very small basis, because, like anything else, it wouldn't pay really to do it on a big scale, because they got a lot of money for back then. Because now there's no value at all in the wool when they do it.
Yeah,
Absolutely none.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because everything is probably made out of other synthetic stuff. I understand when the last time I was home, they were saying it's not even worth it.
Wow.
So that's hard to imagine, and a lot of wool stuff comes from Ireland still,
Yeah.
and very expensive too.
Right. Yeah.
So they might be getting it from some other source.
Yeah. And you had chickens?
We had chickens,
Eggs?
eggs, and we had ducks and geese. So we had a lot of stuff going on. This is when we were like all at home, you know what I mean? In later years, as we started to leave, then my mother had to, of course, scale it down, because it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
manpower.
we had pigs and little baby pigs, and years and years ago, when I look back on it, my mom would sit up 2 or 3 nights, just sitting on a chair, watching the sow, we used to call her,
Yeah.
the female pig, going to have her babies. And of course, you never knew when she was going to have them.
Right.
So you had to be there, because if you weren't there, she might lie down on top of them and kill them all off. Because they have a tendency like to be very kind of like sickly when they're going into the birth of these little babies. So my mom would just sit up all night long, and she'd be exhausted and practically falling asleep, but she wouldn't go to bed, just in case that anything would happen to one of them.
Wow, interesting. Did you speak Irish in your home?
Yeah, I took every subject in school in Gaelic except for English.
So they taught in Gaelic
Yeah,
in your school?
The nuns, I went to the nuns, and even in secondary school, I spent 2 years in secondary school over there before I came out here, and we learned all our subject, prayers, math, everything in Gaelic.
So was it spoken regularly in the house? I mean, was it
No, that's why we lost it. You know what I mean? As a young person, going to school and doing my homework and lessons and all, I could keep it going, but because you didn't speak it at home, and then, after you got out of school, you just forgot all about it, which was a shame.
Yeah. What was school like? Where'd you go to school?
School was, I don't have great memories of it, to tell you the truth. We had to walk 3.5 miles to school every day. That's one way.
Yes.
And we came from the country, and like I said, we went to the nuns, and they were not the greatest. I mean, they were good teachers, but they were very, they had no feelings of what it was. They were very mean. Mm-hmm. And I regret to say that, but that is the truth. And I always thought if I ever had children of my own, I would never send them to parochial school. And we didn't, because I had some very bad memories of the nuns. They were mean. They were very derogatory to people from the country. They had their favorites, like people from the town. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a really happy experience. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't wait to leave school.
How old were you when you left school?
I went on, because I was the last of the Mohegans, I went on to secondary school, and that would be a 4-year program. But in the meantime, my sisters out here started working on getting me to come to this country. And the next thing, my papers came, and I didn't really have any say in it. I was bound for America.
And how old were you then?